Recording running and the live stream has also commenced. So welcome to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting. Apologies for late running. We had a workshop before this that ran a little over time with external parties. So apologies. I don't believe there's any apologies. I note got Councillor McIntyre online. No declarations of interest that I'm aware of, but any councillors got any conflicts with the materials within today's papers? There being none. And if any do come up as you go through and you identify them, please raise them at the time. We have no public forums, petitions or deputations. We have minutes on pages 2 to 8 of our pack. No, good. I'll take those that everyone has read the minutes, but are there any matters of fact or corrections required? Being none.
There's been some minor corrections from staff.
Minor corrections from staff of typographical nature, not substantive.
Substantive. On page 5, paragraph 4, there's a sentence there that says quick guide to capital reserve maintenance, which had previously been issued to all schemes. That quick guide had only been provided to the Wanganui rating district.
Correct. Correct. So that adjustment will be made in the versions of record. Thank you.
There's another one. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to move, Chair, that they're untrue and correct.
Subject to that one amendment.
Subject to that amendment.
I have second. Thank you, Andy. Any further discussion? All those in favour?
Right.
Against, if any? Carried. 6.1 on page 10. We have got the actions list. Oscar is speaking to update on that.
Yeah, not on the screen.
Peter, you're on screen.
Yep. So this is point 2. Basically, just council is aware that, the committee's aware that we're putting in an enterprise content management solution, and this solution is basically going to be looking to make sure that we collect all the records and have access to them over the future. I mean, what's happened in the past is the past, and we've just got to basically put in a system which enables us to address the concern that this action actually puts up. So that's underway. Blair's well across it, and I'm sure it'll be talked about in one of our meetings going forward when it's getting into being more into a a implement space.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Any of the committee members or Peter? There being none, there is a recommendation that the committee resolve to receive the actions list and information sheet noted. Over mover.
Be happy to second that.
Thank you, Mark. All those in favour? Against, if any? You didn't have a late point there that you wanted. Thank you. Chair's report. I have nothing in particular to raise, so I think we can just move through that item. There. Draft annual report. Stuart.
Sure, councillors. I'm really pleased to present to you the draft annual report for the period ending the 30th of June 2025. You'll recognise some of the information in this report already. We've already previously talked through the non-financial performance report, and what I've done in this draft, and it is still draft, is to set out a summary of that non-financial performance. also been presented throughout the year, more recently certainly, with the financial information. And so what we've done, obviously, wrap this up, going to present and summarise the financial performance of the council during the year. Very happy to go through questions on the draft annual report, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, in a minute. But what I'd like to do is hand over to Stuart Much, our auditor, to actually take through council his report. And if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it out to him.
Fine. First of all, Stuart, I apologize, I didn't welcome you specifically at the start of the meeting. It's not the first time we've seen each other this week.
Thank you for having me.
Just a copy of the information that's going to come out. I'm still looking this through.
So Stuart, we might just carry on while.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for having me here today. So we're obviously here on the 2nd of October, which is considerably earlier than in previous years. And so I can say that in terms of the status of the audit, we're largely done. As you'll see in front of you, the draft annual reports probably on it's about the 2nd or 3rd version, and we're just doing sort of the final checks ahead of your adoption meeting next week. So we'll be in line to issue our audit report next week when you do adopt the full annual report. I'd characterise this year in terms of management's progress and our audit as we've sort of seen a progressive maturity and improvement on the matters that we identified last year. So during the course of the 24 audit, we obviously observed there'd been sort of significant change of the guard within the building, and a lot of investigation had been started into a number of sort of matters in regards to financial management. Now, a lot more maturity has been achieved in that process during the course of FY25, so that you're now in a much better position of understanding where things are at in terms of the numbers and sort of connectivity in regards to sort of operational financial side of the business. So I think that sort of puts you in good stead. And the first thing I'll just take you through. Obviously, first of all, apologies for not distributing our paper beforehand. Things with the time of the year, a number of different councils are trying to land their planes on the same airstrip at the same time. And also 30th September is a pretty busy time of the year for a number of other organisations signing off. But I am satisfied in terms of where we're at in terms of the progress of the audit. But I will talk some of the points within my document. One of the key points that we discussed at length last year was in regards to the valuation of your flood control assets. And so we raised concerns that there hadn't necessarily been enough work done in terms of understanding the scale and structure and actually the costs of your flood control assets last year. And we were somewhat concerned about the depth of the valuation exercise that was undertaken. Management's taken that on board this year and have gone to detailed work to understand basically the scale of your structures. They've done a lot more mapping and documentation of the data associated with that asset base, which has put you in a much better position. That picture has been presented to WSP as a valuer, and they've taken some of your contract costs and also other costs that they've observed in the market to come up with a valuation for as at 30th June 2025, which you've adopted into your financial statements. We've examined that process, kept in touch with management during the year, and we're satisfied that the valuation has been fairly stated for the purposes of financial statements. Last year, we qualified our opinion in relation to that. This year, we will have no qualification in regards to the 30th June 2025 numbers. Unfortunately, there's a technical matter associated with audit reporting. We still have to make mention in the audit report that last year's comparative number for the flood control assets had that qualification. We couldn't make that retrospectively go away, but we could in conjunction with management, examine the detailed work that management have undertaken this year to get to a position for 30th of June 25. So just to sort of any questions or queries on that matter before I get away. So that's forward progress, and so pleased that work's been done.
Well, as chair, I certainly recognise the amount of work that's been done and being involved in other unitary and regional councils over the years. The records now and the understanding of the stock banks that this council's got would probably be the best that I've seen. And I think they have really done a good job to understand it. You also happen to have some of the best rainfalls in the country, and therefore it's absolutely vital that we've got this really good understanding, which will serve us well to be able to see the movement in the productive capacity, if you like, of the stock banks over time, and therefore better understand the maintenance required and be able to demonstrate that we are maintaining the assets. So I think it's really well done to the staff and the team here under Darryl's leadership on this project.
So the next area of focus really has been the capital works program that you've been undertaking during the year. And so obviously you'll be fully conscious of the various different projects that have been ongoing. We've looked at the nature of the expenditure being incurred, how that's been recorded, and the progress achieved within whether projects have been completed or whether they're still sort of sitting in capital work in progress. They're obviously all at various different stages. We're satisfied how that cost has been captured. There's one or two very small little things around sort of some cut-off stuff, but nothing, just ongoing improvement. And so we were satisfied with how capital work in progress has been finalised. Associated with the capital works is your grants and subsidies. And so you obviously work closely with various different agencies in regards to the funding that you're receiving. And you'll see on page 6 of my document a number of the different funding areas of funding providers that you've been receiving funds from, and also the key for you that you have to work through is where you've received funds in advance or where you are charging after having done the work. And it's the key is about making sure that you're recognising revenue in an appropriate way. So we looked at that closely. There was some significant billing in advance for Westport just prior to year end, but that was recorded appropriately within receivables, but it's also been recorded in revenue in advance. So the accuracy of identifying that, those charges and then putting them to the balance sheet and utilising them as you incur the expense is the appropriate way to go. And so that's what we were really looking for. One of the things that did come to management's attention late in the year is that through some discussions in regards to the project down in Franz Joseph, in regards to some hectic work that was going to be carried out for NZTA, there was an amount of money that had been recognised as revenue back in 2021 or maybe 2022 that through discussions with NZTA and the decision to de-scope a piece of work and diminish the level of cost on local ratepayers, it's been decided that some funds need to be returned to NZTA. Management have gone and booked that as a liability at 30th of June 2025, and we're comfortable with that approach. In terms of other matters, it's just really important just to have an ongoing understanding of the status of projects, the status of the funding structures, both obviously operational and within the capital works team, but also within the finance team. So the organisation can stay coordinated in terms of the cost being incurred and the funding being recovered from the Crown or other agencies as matters progress. Last year, you'll recall that there was some concerns around the rate strike. Obviously, there was some changes around what the rates were going to look like in the long-term plan when you were working through that in 2024. But you know, the rates were struck in a legal manner, and have been recovered during the course of the year. There were some non-rateable properties that had been originally included in the calculations, but those were resolved and doesn't have any impact on the financial statements. So that's certainly progress from the previous year. Just a couple of other areas I'll touch on, and they're kind of related. That's really in terms of your non-financial reporting, so your service performance reporting and sort of some of that activity level reporting. As a part of your long-term plan process, you decided to restructure your activities. So you went from 7 activities to 5 activities, and that made sense from a management and council perspective. As part of that exercise, one thing was that, you know, there were a number of changes of performance measures. So within your performance framework, you've got your new baselines, new targets being set for new measures, but you don't always have comparative performance information because you change your measures through the long-term plan process. And that's not unreasonable. It's quite commonplace where you sort of say, okay, well, we've been measuring things in this way. In actual fact, now that we've restructured our activities and understand this process more, that you've tuned it into a different direction. And so that's just sort of something that's now sits within. You'll have comparative information, and over the course of the 3 years of this long-term plan that you're operating within, you will build up sort of historical information that will supporting sort of decision making. The only other factor in terms of that change of the group of activities is you don't have comparative financial information at the new activity level. You have your long-term plan. So you, in your funding impact statements by activity, you have your actual 2024-25 numbers, which we've audited, and we're comfortable with those numbers, and you're comparing those just to your long-term plan numbers. You didn't basically completely rewire the building and restate all your comparative numbers. Now, there's some regulations, financial reporting regulations that require you to have that comparative information because it's missing, but we totally understand why it's missing. We have to raise that as a technical matter in our audit report. But in regards to the 2025 numbers and the LTP numbers, we're totally comfortable with how that's been presented.
Just for clarity there, Stuart, if I can ask from the chair, you've got a total expenditure there for the 23-24 of 24,731 million, which came from last year's accounts. This year, 24-25, 8,583. Both those numbers are correct, but the issue is that when we drop from 7 areas to 5, better align with the business and what the community wanted through there, we have not rewired the history back to match the current way that we're looking at things. So there's no problems with the numbers. It's just a technical matching apples and apples. We've got an apples and oranges.
Yeah, that is correct. So within page, I think it's about 83 of your agenda, which is your statement of comprehensive income. You're showing in your income statement your comparators, which reflected your old activities, and you're showing your this year's, which is reflecting your new activities. So a reader can see, okay, so we had that cost structure last year, we've now got this cost structure this year, and so you can still see the format of the extent of the expenditure incurred in previous years. It's just that when you then take this into the activity level, you don't necessarily have the comparatives able to be shown at the activity level. So it's a technical matter which we've been required. The general asked us to make note of that in our audit report, but it doesn't really impact substantively impact.
Through the chair, would you have advised we brought the old ones down into the new system so we compare the new with the old, or taken the new ones that we've got there and made up a file of them, so they look like the old ones?
Yeah, I mean, You would have, it would have required quite a lot of work, and it probably would not, you would not have got an economic return on your investment of your time, essentially, to do that. So it's understandable, and that decision was made as a part of the long-term plan process. And we would have had to have re-audited those activity numbers. And I don't think it would have provided that much benefit to the reader.
Show anything was right.
So to be clear, not only would to get through this problem, the council would have had to incur a lot of cost internally, but also you would have incurred extra cost as well. So
it would have
from a
consumed-
ratepayer's point of view, this is probably a very sensible decision.
Not justified. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that matter will be in your past next year. It's a technical historical challenge because of the decision made to basically realign your business, but it will be in the past and history next year.
Thank you.
So look, happy to take any other questions or queries in regards to the audit or where things are at. There are a small number of what I would term as immaterial audit differences that we've brought to your attention in the appendix. We're just working through with management whether there's efficiencies in adjusting for some of those or not, but they have no impact on our audit report. So we just have a duty to bring things to our attention. The list is substantially shorter than last year. Our next step for us is obviously to issue our audit report next week, and then we will produce what we call our report to management, which will go through our findings and recommendations in terms of the control environment. And that will include a bit of a summary as to where we had matters that we raised last year and how they've been either closed out or partially closed out during the course of the year, just so people can keep a tracker on that. But we'll provide that to the next audit committee. Take questions.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I've got a question, Stuart. So, in a nutshell, overall, a vast improvement on 24, and the full report in full form will be available, would you think, in a couple of weeks?
So the pitch that we've seen, and it was a lot more auditable and cleaner this year than it was last year, because you were still dealing with a fair bit of debris last year. So we were able to reach our conclusions in a lot more efficient and effective manner, and we will issue our audit report following your adoption of the annual report next week.
Thank you.
I think given the election coming up on the 11th, we've been really squeezed, and all councils have been squeezed because the statutory deadline for this is 31 October. But unfortunately, this council finishes and a new one will start in that period. So the teams had to work through, and many councils are not making it through because of the squeeze. They just haven't done it. So I think it's really a positive that the team has managed to pull this together, and we're sitting here anticipating the adoption next week prior to the elections happening. Personal view is that the scheduling of the elections during the key period for producing annual report is not really particularly good form from whoever sets the dates up in Wellington, but I know it's always been the second Saturday in October. But from an annual reporting point of view, the second Saturday in November would probably be an awful lot better, maybe somewhat inconvenient in my home province of Canterbury, because that'll be show day in many cases. But yeah, we've really been squeezed and the teams come up. So I'm pleased personally with being chair to see us sitting where we are.
Election day is show day.
It's clear, it would be if we had second Saturday in November. Well, show day's the Friday, but everyone's sort of away.
Mr. Chair, obviously the documentation, from my perspective, the draft annual report is still a draft today. I'm seeking yourself and councillors' expectations for any changes in terms of the documentation through this paper. And keen to just make sure that you're aware that when I do come back next Tuesday. That I'll be presenting a full change log of everything that from what you've got right now and to the documents that is presented as a full document, as you'd expect, it's normal. Are there any particular matters, Mr. Chair, that you'd like me to reconsider in terms of how the annual report was set out at this point in time?
From myself, I don't have any, but I might just note that as a chartered accountant and former auditor, it would be really useful if I was shared in with the change log to give an assurance then back to the councillors that as chair of audit and risk, I'm satisfied with the changes that have been made from this, and there are no matters of concern along the way. I know Stuart and his team will also be looking incredibly closely at everything before they issue their opinion, but on behalf of the councillors, I'm happy to step in and have a look at any changes that are there. And if necessary, I can be available on video for the council meeting if that's required.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Further questions? Any further closing comments?
Thank you. I would like just to make this comment, and this is more for members of the public that may be online or the media as well. So please, we are not adopting the annual report today. I want to be really clear about that. This is the draft that comes to the Risk Insurance Committee and a chance to raise any matters in that respect. We've had the report from Stuart, thank you on that to this committee, and we'll be looking at bringing this next Tuesday to the final council meeting of the triennium. And as the chair has said, and what a wonderful piece of work from the collective teams, both the regional council team and the audit team with EY, to be able to get it to the final council meeting of the triennium, which is substantially ahead of the end of October deadline from Audit General for this. But also that also signifies a substantial improvement in timeframes from many previous years of either in being either late and not meeting the 30th of October or coming down right on the date. So well done to both my team, but also thank you, Stuart, for you and your team and the way you've conducted the audit with the council staff. Thank you. So we look forward to adoption on Tuesday. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a recommendation on page 12 of the papers. There are 6 items listed in that recommendation that you have in your papers. I propose to take that as a single recommendation if everyone is happy with that. Just noting that myself as the chair will be available to oversee and to provide you with an assurance on the changes that have been made. And I don't believe any of them are an issue. But with that comment, do I have someone who's happy to move that recommendation?
One little comment just before we go. On the annual report, I think they're a bit tough on themselves on the draft annual report on 8.1.1, where the national policy statement, they've given themselves a fail, but I think they should really be an innate, not applicable, because if the regional policy statements weren't advanced, then it was an impossible task to do. I think they've given themselves a fail, but really those two should be innate, not applicable.
What page?
It's on the annual report on,
So we can be specific.
what page it will be, and do that. 8.1.1.
Through the chair.
It's quite a long.
Councillor, I'm presuming you're talking to regional policy statement measure 18 or target 18, 19.
Yeah, that's it. I think.
Yeah. And so, yes, I've been consistent in terms of my interpretation. We weren't able to deliver those work programs because of some factors.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we didn't deliver. So I think it's fair and reasonable to advised the community that we didn't deliver them.
But you couldn't deliver them, so
Couldn't
I,
deliver them.
so I
That's
think,
correct.
you know, you've done the best you could under the circumstances, so
I note the commentary, councillor, work could not proceed due to factors beyond the control.
Consequently, the target not achieved.
Yeah.
And that was placed against them.
And would it be useful to consider,
red crosses in the next column.
would it be, yes, and red crosses, would it be a useful amendment to say why, what was the factor outside the control to inform our community better that it was due to central government's processes?
Yes. Not coming through to deliver the information for us to work.
Okay, on the next page, I hate to sound like a crack record, but on the next page, second page, 28 harbour navigation safety thing, it's a similar thing. You've got that, no report required, but it's an NA, not applicable.
Sorry, through the chair,
Yeah.
first, thank you. The long-term plan sets a specific target for those earlier measures and has no target at all for measure number 28 for the year. So while there was no specific target to achieve or not achieve. So these first two we put back, which are measures, give me 15, 19 weeks, we would work on it. And so I think it's fair and reasonable to say we did not do that work.
Yeah.
I completely agree where you come from. We couldn't do that
Yeah,
work.
so I was thinking you're just being a bit tough on yourself.
You potentially could say just not assessed. So it's kind of like a plank
Yeah.
rather than a fail. It does look like a fail.
Yeah, it does.
So
And it's not.
I'd probably happy, as I said, because you've actually, as long as you've got the description, yes, say, hang on, well, some of the central government level didn't do the piece of work that we expected them to do, and hence you did not assess yourself against that target.
Unable to assess.
Yeah, that would be probably appropriate in that circumstance.
Totally agree through the chair. If the auditor's happy with that, I think that's a far better way of looking at that, because there will be critics out there that'll go, regional council fails again, you know. We've seen it time and time again. It'll be a storm in the teacup again, and
I'll pull out a once-off rather than something.
Yeah.
Let's start turning more pages.
whereas it was. Yep. So I think that's a really good point, councillor Cole, and if the auditor and Stuart, you're happy to amend that, I would suggest that would be a great amendment. Yeah.
So it's not a pass, it's just a.
It's not assessed.
It's definitely not a pass.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks to Councillor Cole for raising that, and thank you, Stuart, for giving us, some steer from an audit review of how to handle that. That will be changed and brought in the fresh version on next Tuesday for adoption. Thank you. That's very, very useful, because I've been distinctly uncomfortable with that. Thank you.
Any other comments we've got?
That's me.
Okay, we've got the recommendation on page 12, I think it was, of that pack.
You'd be happy to move.
You're happy to move?
1-6.
1-6, and you're happy to second, councillor Cole. The last discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. Moving forward. Flood protection valuation. And this has been referred to earlier in our discussions, and we have a copy of it. Thing in here, the WSP valuation. I'll take the valuation as read, and that everyone's read their papers, and we've already had a reasonable discussion, but again, it's a huge piece of work to allow us to get to this particular point, and that's real credit to the team of the hard work done since last year. Unfortunately, yes, we've still got to have a reminder of history in our audit opinion, that we weren't there last year, but it's great that we've got it there now. Stuart, any other comments you want to make on that from the point of view?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair, thank you. So this valuation is it may be new for us to release this information into a public environment, but we believe it's really important for the community to be aware of the value that's being put on by an external valuer onto the public assets that council manage. That should be used to drive and support some of the rating district meetings that we're coming up later in the year, and that's the intention that it will be used. So having this in a public environment, we believe, is really important. Now, this the valuation, and there's some condition assessment information there as well. That talks to the condition of the assets. It doesn't talk to whether they're purpose, and it doesn't talk to any risk. And we need to be really clear on that. It just talks to how the assets are at this point in time. So that will drive that conversation going forward. And I believe it's a really mature thing for us to do, to present this to the community, in a public environment. And that's really all I wanted to talk to you, Mr. Chair. Is there any questions yourself or councillors have?
None from myself, other than note that $200 million worth of assets.
A lot of assets.
It's a lot of money and a lot of investment to protect
Absolutely.
the ratepayers and people of this region.
Yes.
Sorry, through the chair. One point, just want to make it really clear that this is a valuation for financial purposes and not for insurance purposes. It's not an insurance valuation.
Thank you. That's a very valid point that this was commissioned to support the financial statements. And there are different types of valuations out there with different assumption sets. So the assumptions were to meet financial reporting standards.
Through you, Chair.
So just so the members are aware that we did meet with the valuers a number of times during the course of the audit, and asked a lot of probing questions, and we're satisfied with how it's been done. And it was from a professional perspective, it felt a lot more satisfying this year than the discussions with previous valuers. So it was great.
Thank you for that comment, Stuart. Any other?
What is the subtle difference between the two?
Last year's would be best described as a desktop without really critiquing either the qualitative or quantitative information underlying it. Whereas this year, I mean, management had done a lot of the underlying qualitative and condition existence work, but that was reviewed quite closely by WSP. They also did some spot inspection, but also had an awareness of your asset base. And then they coupled that with a review of your actual costs that you've been incurred in the last 2 to 3 years, and collated data from about 3 or 4 other councils where they've seen other councils undertaking work of your nature. There isn't anything quite like the work that you do on the West Coast here, but they consider like councils and the pricing that they've been getting in the broader market to sense checks in case that some of the prices that you've been put up were either unusual, shall we say, or just too small a sample. And so they brought all that together to come up with the appropriate unit rates to apply to your volumes to come up with the valuation.
We have during earlier discussions alluded to the significant work, and I thought it's probably useful for our chief executive to give an overview of all of the processes that went through to inform the rating districts that are going to be in receipt of this, and this is very important to those rating districts. So Darryl, maybe a quick overview of the process over the last 12 months or so to get to here.
Mr. Chairman, look, I'll make 3 or 4 points. Firstly, what we have now is a fulsome inventory of our assets, and you'll remember we have approximately 66 kilometres of flood banks. Another 16 kilometres coming with Westport, and previously a lot of those flood banks were recorded as a line on a map without the prerequisite volume information, which then speaks to amount of material that then speaks to value, right? So the volume information was either collected from as-built drawings, but many of our stock banks don't have as-built drawings, and so along those 66 kilometres of flood bank, there was a lot of walking and drones and other ways of getting that information. So full credit to the huge amount of field work from the staff there. The second thing is, along with the complete inventory of the flood banks, we now have a much better understanding of which banks actually have tow rock and the rock protection on the front faces, where before that might not have been collected. And then the third big thing that's been done really is the cost modelling of distances to source of quarrying material and where that material haulage rates and all of that sort of thing is quite a complex modelling exercise across all the different schemes to see what unit rates need to be applied if we have to replace those assets. And then over and above all of that, and work still in progress, is a condition rating to the nationally consistent asset management system that's been adopted by all the regional councils across New Zealand, which is heavily involved in with the two Urukai regional CEOs, where we've condition rated the banks from 1 being pretty top notch and absolutely to level of service and standard, to level 5, which is the least desirable and could be quite compromised. We're still validating those condition assessments at the moment, not ready to release that data just at the moment because it's still going through a QA, but that will then speak to our maintenance schedules because we don't want impairment on our banks. We've got to actually say that we're maintaining to the level of service, otherwise we're going to pay depreciation, which we don't want to do, and I'm sure our schemes don't want to do. Thanks. In a nutshell, that's a lot of the work that's gone on, and that's been hours and hours and hours of work from the staff. Thanks.
So that includes, from my understanding, surveys of the riverbeds at various points across, so we can monitor if shingle wash is coming down and the effectiveness of the stop banks is changing, to inform us as to maintenance costs and potential risk of overflow.
So yes, Mr. Chairman. So earlier in the year, the council adopted a riverbed survey monitoring strategy to reset the 10-year strategy around all that to inform aggregation of the riverbeds relative to floodbank heights, which speaks to your level of service. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members? If not, we've got a recommendation on page 15 of our pack that we received a report, note the overall valuation and note the scheme-specific variations and valuations from the previous valuations. You're happy to move? Thank you. Thank you. Seconded. Any last discussion? If not, all those in favour? Aye. Against, if any? Carried. Thank you, Mark. 8.3. We have got the quick guide to capital expenditure classification on page 18 of our pack. We talked about this in previous meeting, and thank you very much for that.
The only comment there is that this paper is a response to an action item from the last Risk and Insurance Committee meeting. The guide attached was presented to and adopted by the Water Ameliorating District earlier this year, and it's there to provide people with assistance because what's CapEx and what's OpEx isn't always clear. So CapEx is capital expenditure, OpEx is operating expenditure, and your maintenance generally falls under your operating expenditure. Any questions?
Just a comment through the chair, and it's a very good news that when it worked well at Wanganui, and it's good for people in rating districts to work out what is CapEx and what is maintenance. It's good example.
There's no accounting jargon in sight.
I won't take credit for this piece of work. This was prepared by Fiona, who's with us online, and she's done a really great job.
Thank you, Fiona. It is a very good document. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we could just probably record, probably by way of action, that this now needs to find its way into the agendas of all the other 80 districts. given it was presented at Wanganui. No, it's most important, Wanganui is not a capital scheme, a maintenance only scheme, and that was most important, but at one time or another, the rating schemes will face this. So it needs to be part of the agenda for the next round. Thank you.
The distinction between CapEx and OpEx isn't just specific to council. I've encountered this in all different industries that I've worked in, so this guide really is helpful.
Excellent. Plain English accounting, I like it.
Yep.
We have a recommendation that we receive this report. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thanks, Mark, and seconded. No further discussion? All those in favour? Against, if any? Carried. I've not been notified of any general business.
Unless any comes,
The table you do have.
No, look, it was, given it's the end of the millennium and, be my last, meeting at the, Risk and Assurance. I just want to thank you, Graham, as Independent Chair, for your professionalism in being, taking on this role and your accounting knowledge. And I'm sure this has brought, quite a change to the council as, being the chair of the Risk and Assurance committee. So, and I think it'll be great going forward into the next term. So thank you for what you've brought to this committee.
Thank you for that, Chair Haddock. It's really just picking up from the work that the late Frank Dooley started. And this is another fellow chartered accountant, and he is unfortunately unable to be with us due to his passing. But yes, I'd like to also thank everyone on the committee for accepting me in and really listening and working with me, and I've enjoyed working with you. So that's probably the last meeting there, apart from our public excluded, which is the next item on the agenda, is to move into public excluded. And we've got the reasons set out on pages 21 through 23, with a note of the items that will be discussed in public excluded. So if everyone's happy,
I'll just make one comment there, that in case I'm not back next year. The of the 6 years I've been here, this would have to be the best audit I've ever been in. And I really want to thank the staff, Stuart here, and Daryl, for doing what you have done to make it so much easier. I remember sitting here about 3-4 years ago, man, it was just chaos and everything was getting extended, and Stuart's bill went through the roof.
It's on mine at the time.
But anyway, thanks to staff for what they've done to make this so painless, really, for us councillors.
Just reiterating those comments too, Brett, you know, and I've only been here 3 years, but well, the difference in that 3 years that and this organisation's got real professional, you know, and from what it was a cop case, and I had to know what it was back, you know, before that. So I just reiterate those comments, and thanks, Stuart. And I think it's going to be a good audit report by the lot.
Keep working on it.
There's room for improvement.
Yeah, no, it's never a dull moment. And if you take your foot off the accelerator, you stop pretty quick. So it's got to keep working.
and if you think you're winning, the regulator will come on and change some rule on us.
I'm sure they will.
I think we shouldn't underestimate either the participation levels. More councillors attended all those all-day sessions, because that's a big part of getting the conversation going and the dialogue. And you know, that was attended pretty regularly.
Need to acknowledge Stuart and them that they won't be here next time, and thank you for all your help, because you played a big part in all this. And Peter.
Stuart.
Thank you. I had started discussing the moving into public excluded and the resolutions on page 21 to 23 of the papers. Do I have a mover for that?
Yep, I'll move that.
Thank you. Mark.
Seconded.
All those in favour? Against, if any? We're back live streaming and in public. There were no decisions made and public excluded. We just received updates on reports. And being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed.